over the weekend too, or like Friday leading into the weekend, there was some more controversy surrounding Caitlin. And so I really liked what she said in this post game when asked about the foul, because she basically just shut it down. Like, it's something that happens, it's play on the ball. And I actually was really happy that she said that, because I have been critical about sometimes, like, I feel like when she's like, oh, I just feel like I'm being hammered, and some of the stuff she does where maybe it's not intentional, but I feel like it feeds the narratives that something is happening to you that isn't happening to others. So I was actually really happy that she just like shut it down and was like, this is not that deep, and I was hoping that that would allow her fans and some of the media to take the cues from her, but it didn't. And so we've talked a lot about people using her. Owen, you mentioned that earlier. You said these are people who are just coming in, they're sort of using her name. And she was asked about that on Friday. She was asked about people weaponizing her name twice. So Jim Trotter asked about it in the morning. Jim Trotter covers a lot of like race and culture issues, among other things, in sports of The Athletic. And the answer that Caitlin gave initially kind of sparked some backlash and a lot of conversation. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But then another Athletic reporter, James Boyd, went back and asked the question again, a little bit more targeted and specific. And he was asking, I believe, as a result of a tweet from Dejanay Carrington. So we'll talk about that also in a moment. But I want to hear from Caitlin and what she said in this discussion when she was asked that question.
Caitlin, I know you mentioned that, you want to focus straight on basketball. Definitely respect that. But when, just to ask you directly, when people use your name for racism, misogyny, whatever, what is your response to that specifically?
Yeah, I think it's disappointing. I think, everybody in our world, deserves the same amount of respect. The women on our league deserve the same amount of respect. So people should not be using my name to push those agendas. It's disappointing. It's not acceptable. But yeah, I mean, this league is a league I grew up admiring and wanting to be a part of. Like, some of the women in this league were my biggest idols and role models growing up and helped me want to achieve this moment right here that I get to play in every single night. So just treating every single woman in this league with the same amount of respect, I think is just a basic human thing that everybody should do. Like, just be a kind person and treat them, how you would want to be treated. And I think it's, very simple.
So I liked that answer from Caitlin. I didn't love her answer earlier in the day where she sort of just like, I'm just trying to play basketball and I don't see that. So I appreciated her going a step further with this answer. Many are debating the question asked wasn't clear, whatever. I don't want to get into that because that's silly to me. But I did like that she gave this answer. And it really did spark a lot of conversation. Like I mentioned, a player that you cover, Terrika, Dejanay Carrington, tweeted about her earlier statement. And I do think that was part of the impetus for why this question came later, along with some backlash throughout the day. Owen, what did you think of just how that day transpired and her two answers and what we eventually got to?
Yeah, that day was a mess. I'm going to try to not be my cynical self here, because I do think that she was great with the second answer. Like she said what needed to be said there. And I think that could be the end of the discussion, but it's not the end of the discussion, because I think there is a pretty clear split between the white players in this league of those who actively acknowledge their privilege and those who kind of passively let it slide by. And the fact that she really had to be pushed so hard to speak out about this, I would like to see her bring it up out of the blue as it pertains to her teammate, Aaliyah Boston, and all the awful things that she has had to see on social media through the start of this season. So I do give Caitlin credit for sure that she nailed it on take two. But, I wouldn't be surprised if her people maybe got to her something. And I just think that, I get it. These players want to focus on basketball. A lot of players don't want to talk about social issues, et cetera. They are just, that is kind of their athletic mindset. But there becomes a point where that's not acceptable. And what we're seeing in this league right now is really harmful, really hurtful, really worrisome. And I would love to see players like Caitlin look for opportunities to talk about this instead of having to be pushed so hard just to get an acceptable soundbite out of them.
Can I just ask from your perspective, why do you think it's important? Because people seem to think we're trying to turn Caitlin Clark into an activist. And quite frankly, I don't think asking someone to denounce racism or transphobia, homophobia, whatever it is, also, just whatever the isms are, right? Sexism, misogyny, just anything. I don't think asking someone to denounce those things is one, turning them into an activist, and I don't think it's a big lift. So this notion that it's a lot to ask of someone, I'm sorry, if we cannot as a society say racism is bad, then I don't know. But why do you think it's important? Because there are other players, and you sort of alluded to some who are active about it, and we know that there's Cameron Brink, there's Kelsey Plum, there's people at the college level, Paige Beckers, Haley Van Lith. Like, there have been players that are very active about it. And then there are some who are passive. And I'm not trying to name who we think is passive or not, but can you explain why with Caitlin Clark specifically, maybe not being someone who is comfortable being active about it, why it's important for her specifically to speak up on these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it in that this is the bare minimum. The bar is very low. So I think that is why it's important is we are not asking these athletes to be activists. We are simply saying you need to support those around you. You need to say the bare minimum because the real life effects of the racism and the misogyny and the transphobia that is rampant in sports and online in sports fandom makes its way to these players. We saw what Kennedy Carter had to deal with getting off the bus to go to their team hotel a few weeks ago. We saw Aaliyah Boston have to delete her social media. Aaliyah Boston, who is someone who is nothing but the best vibes. You should not have to push her teammates to do the bare minimum just to stick up for her the way Aaliyah would stick up for her teammates. It's unacceptable, and that's why I think we need to ask more of these players. And the more, let's be frank, it's not that much. It is just, it's solidarity, plain and simple. It is not, asking people to be activists. It is just asking these players to be good people and good teammates.
Yeah, Terrika, I'm curious. I do want to know what you think, but I also want to ask you, because one of the questions that Jim Trotter asked her earlier in the day that we did not play was him saying, do you think not speaking out, and I'm paraphrasing him, but affects your relationships with, players around the league, and she kind of spoke on, well, she didn't think so, but it's most important that she bonds with her teammates. So as someone who's been here for a while, you cover these players, you know them. I'm not asking you to reveal anything, but I thought that was a really great question, because I made this point last week that Caitlin doesn't have to do anything, and we don't expect it. We think it's a good idea to, but you also cannot discount the fact that doing so and speaking up like that would endear her to teammates and other players. And you don't have to, but there is also a real life impact of not speaking up either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would deny that there is a large portion of people who feel that silence is equivalent to complacency, and that it really is the antithesis of acknowledgement of a situation when you remain silent. And I don't ever want a player to feel like they have to be disingenuous about their activism, right? If this isn't your thing, if this is not what you do, no one's asking you to step outside of your comfort zone in that way, right? Perfect example, I love animals. I think animals are awesome, but there are some people out there who are way more into the field of animal activism and protection than I am. And so it might look a bit disingenuous for me to be at that level, knowing that I'm probably not as in depth into it as some others, right? So no one's asking Caitlin to be a Maya Moore. You know what I mean? And I say Maya Moore because she says that Maya Moore is her favorite player, her favorite WNBA player. But Maya Moore was also someone who was very heavily a part of activism. So, and I think that is probably why there is an expectation of saying something, because the WNBA is unlike any other league as it relates to professional sports and political activism. This is a league that has truly built its name and reputation on being front and center of the social justice conversation. This league was the first to recognize Pride Month. This league was the first to, was really what led the way in the Say Her Name campaign. They dedicated the entire season in Bradenton, Florida in the bubble for this. This is a league that literally put their season, their livelihoods on the line to activate and flipping the Senate in Georgia. So this is a league that has taken a stance for something. And when you join this league, whether you want to or not, sort of to your point, Natalie, of how Angel was kind of given the villain role, whether she asked for it or not, when you join the WNBA, you're kind of given this notion that social activism is a part of your brand now in some way. It is quite naturally, to be frank, why there was some controversy a couple years ago with Sophie Cunningham, because some of the things that she liked and some of the things that she associated with gave off very different vibes than what the WNBA had become known for, right? And so it's not wrong to say, I think that this person may be the face of the league, but at the end of the day, you've kind of taken on this persona where you've asked for it or not of being the face of the league. A lot of new fans are tuning in because of you. A lot of new people are coming to the sport because of you. And so you have power in your voice, whether you know it or not, whether people have told you this or not, there is power in your voice. And you may not think that you can change people. You may not think that what you say matters. You may say, well, it doesn't matter what I say or what I do. Folks are going to do what they want to do. But that is absolutely incorrect. It's like telling people don't vote because your vote don't count. It does. What you say does matter. How you address things does matter. And so, yes, it is a larger issue that maybe you can't control on your own, but it does provide comfort, and it does provide some form of acceptance from your peers, as well as those who cover you, to know that the behaviors and the things that are said from some of the people who deeply support you and follow you, that you do not condone, that you are not about it, that you do not stand for it. And it felt good to hear. I ain't really about to go off in the question anyway, because whether I say specifically racism or I say divisiveness, the fact is nobody should want their name to be associated with anything that divides people or a culture. So it doesn't matter that one question was specific and the other one was not. At the end of the day, I do not want to be involved, or I do not condone misogyny, bigotry, racism. I'm not with it. I'm not for it. So anyone who's using my name to do anything of that nature, you need to stop. It was really as simple as that.
Right. Agreed. Well, listen, I do want to move on to talking basketball things. So I'm just going to say this. I don't really think Caitlin Clark is being asked something that we wouldn't ask any other person with her stature in a sport to do. And so that's really my problem when people push back. LeBron James is asked things. Stephen Curry is asked things. Serena Williams was asked things. I saw someone suggesting that like Tiger and Michael Jordan were not asked things. That's not true. And so all of these players have been asked things, and usually you're being asked about things that impact your sport. We're not asking you to opine on some random political issue. We're asking about something that is directly impacting your sport, your league, and the players in your league and your teammates. And so I don't think it's out of bounds or inappropriate to ask her about it, or want her to speak up and say something about it. So Owen and Terrika, thank you so much for joining me. Every week I've been saying, I hope we can just move on to talking about basketball. I really hope that, and I continue to hope that, but I do appreciate you guys joining me and giving such great insight.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you.